I've gained more than a third of my body weight here. The diet is all carbs, no protein. I don't have any antibiotic cream, and I don't have a Band-Aid. Borrowing sanitary pads. She said, "You're gonna buy me commissary. You don't snitch, you don't tell on anyone, because you'll be sorry you did."
Mama Donna Adelson breaking down during her bond hearing on Wednesday, describing her life behind bars. We've got more of her tearful testimony as we're awaiting the judge's rulings. Plus, California Governor Gavin Newsom is mulling over the Menendez brothers, launching a risk assessment into the convicted siblings. Also, remember the Georgia mom who was arrested after her son was spotted walking alone? Well, now her case is dismissed. She's going to join us live on the program this hour. Plus, we're on Verdict Watch in Florida for the bedtime murder trial against Jermaine. What could be tipping the scales of justice for the jury? We'll talk about it. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you, and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. We've got a great show planned for you, so let's get it going. It's time for coffee and court, as we like to say. Go ahead, grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. We need some R&R. Let's go to Vietnam, said no one ever, except Donna and Harvey Adelson. For them, it was the perfect place to go while questions of criminal conduct were looming over them. But not because Vietnam doesn't have an extradition agreement with America. No, that wasn't the reason. No. Donna said it was so she wouldn't get stuck in a scary foreign prison, and she could just buy a plane ticket to return home herself, to turn herself in whenever those charges were filed in America. Baloney. Mama Donna, your jail jumpsuit pants are on fire. That ridiculous explanation makes about as much sense as a screen door on a subway. Someone should call the fire department on you immediately. However, I will say that in that twisted rationale, there is a little kernel of truth. Privilege. That's right, the Adelsons are accustomed to a life of privilege. So much privilege that this woman wanted to control the way that she was arrested. She didn't want to hit the foreign scary jail, although the one she's in now doesn't sound much better, but that's beside the point. She wanted to turn herself in on her own terms, perhaps after enjoying some champagne on a first-class flight, right? Well, that got me thinking, my friends. It got me thinking that privilege is exactly what this homicide case is about, isn't it? The case over the murder of beloved law professor and father and Donna's former son-in-law, Danny Markell. The story goes something like this. Allegedly, privileged people didn't get their way in a court case and got very angry. Allegedly, a privileged person or persons wanted to kill the winner of that court case. And allegedly, the privileged folks didn't want to get their hands dirty committing the murder, so they used their wealth to pay someone else to do it. But Lady Justice is blind. Lady Justice doesn't care about privilege. Lady Justice says that if you commit a crime, you do the time. And it's about time for Danny Markell and his family to get complete justice. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
On the top bunk, I found a little girl.
All right. And could you tell anything about the little girl?
She was laying on her side, facing towards me. She was laying in blood, and she had a bullet hole in the center of her forehead.
In Florida, we've got jury deliberations beginning in the bedtime murder trial for Jermaine Bass. Court's going to start up at 9 a.m. Eastern. In Iowa, we've got convicted killer Todd Mollis in court at what's called a post-conviction relief hearing. fancy term for he wants a new trial. He said the first one was unfair. So we're going to go there live together at 9 a.m. Eastern time and watch that testimony. And in Massachusetts, we've got Brian Walsh. Remember him back in court? He's got a big motions hearing today. That's going to start up at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Now to our top story for you. Tearful mama Donna Adelson taking the stand as she's trying to be released from jail ahead of her trial. Wednesday's hearing dealt with two major motions. One to suppress evidence of a jail phone call with her son Charlie that tipped authorities off to her plan to go to Vietnam. And another motion regarding her bond. She wants a bond that will get her out of that jail while she awaits her trial. The court has yet to make any decisions. Adelson is asking for the bond release because she's saying she is being threatened by aggressive inmates. Take a listen.
You don't, and the word is snitch, you don't snitch, you don't tell on anyone because you'll be sorry you did. And I've seen that. And so, I didn't even tell you for a while. I wasn't going to tell anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want, she's a big woman, and I was afraid of her.
Okay. Approximately how tall would you say she is compared to you?
She's over 6 feet, she's over 200 pounds. She's a very large woman.
Okay. Were you afraid of her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was after that.
Okay. And you said that she demanded that you were going to start getting a weekly commissary. Did you do that?
Yes.
Oh my, okay, you can see jail has greatly affected Donna Adelson. So let's dig into these two motions, the phone call and the bond. Let's start with the bond. Since we hear that clip, she's saying that she's been assaulted by another inmate. She's talking about all of her different medical conditions, saying she's not getting the proper treatment for those conditions. Everything seems to be a problem for Donna. Let's bring in our attorney guests. I'm so pleased to have on the show this morning attorneys Michael J. Brown and John Phillips. Good morning to you both. All right, so let's tackle both of these issues. Let's start with the bond, and then we'll get to that creepy jail call. With regards to the bond, Michael J. Brown, should she be let out?
Absolutely not. Good morning, Julie. Good morning, John. I think she's going to strike out on this issue. You know, the issue always is risk of flight and will she return to court? I think her actions demonstrate that the answer is absolutely not. She had a one-way ticket to Vietnam. You hit the points in your opening statement. She had a one-way ticket to Vietnam. She had no intention to come back. Plus, you couple that with the jail call, which was unbeknownst to her recorded, where she's talking again about escaping the country to a location specifically that can't extradite her to the U.S. Everything she knows and has is in the state of Florida, and this is her country. Her family, her assets are all in the state of Florida. So clearly, if anybody is a risk of flight, I would think she is. So I don't think there's going to be any amendment of her bail conditions at this point, quite frankly.
I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. John Phillips, feel free to disagree if you do, but do you agree that Mama Donna needs to stay put?
She does. She needs to hang out in the beautiful jails in Florida. You know, Michael took all the good answers. I had even looked up the extradition treaty myself, and Vietnam does not have one with the United States. And certainly, if you're talking about a one-way ticket and not a return trip, that tells you something about intent to flee and remain a Vietnam permanent tourist. So, yeah, look, jails, and we can debate that in another segment that's not about Donna Adelson. Jails are tough, and there are some violations of civil rights that go along with being in jail, but it's not gonna get you a bond in this instance.
Sure. Right, John, right. The beautiful jails in Florida, you cracked me up. Let's listen to that answer again, right? Her answer about why she went to Vietnam, which you both, you brilliant attorneys know that prosecutor's gonna love getting to use this answer at the trial. So let's play it again for anybody who missed it.
So my husband actually had said, you know, we've been to Vietnam before with friends. We were on vacation, and it really was like a place of peace. And so he said, if we go to a non-extradition country, then if the law enforcement decided that they wanted to arrest you or me, whatever, both, he said, we won't be sitting in a foreign prison waiting months to go back. We could buy a ticket and we can go home. And my understanding was that I could go home and I could turn myself in if that's what they wanted.
All right, and what's your reactions to that answer she gave right there? John Phillips, what were you thinking when you heard that?
I mean, just keep talking, please. Prosecutors don't have to prove motive. They don't have to prove, intent to flee and mens rea and all the things that go through one's brain as they're trying to get away from something they allegedly, did. And here she's telling you she wants to leave, and she's already done the research that this is a non-extradition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody who was reacting to it yesterday, I had a couple of people reach out, like texting me going, who says that? Who says all? I mean, she lives on Miami Beach, right? She lives in Miami at the beach, and she's going, I need to relax. Oh, so we thought Vietnam, that's just the place you think of when you want to rest and relax. Michael J. Brown, what did you think of this?
I think it's going to be quite devastating at trial, Julie. Consciousness of guilt, as John hit on, that's a charge that a jury gets. And in New York, I can't tell you about Florida, but in New York, it's not a strong charge, but nevertheless, it is a charge the jury can hear. And the prosecutor, a good prosecutor, is going to take that evidence and really slam it home, because to a person on the jury, it is so damning that she bought a one-way ticket to Vietnam, and then also talks about it in that subsequent phone calls about extradition and escaping the country. It is going to be very, very damaging at trial.
Most definitely. You're absolutely right. So let's turn to the other big issue, this phone call. So she's talking to Charlie. This is in 2023 when he's behind bars. And she is not yet at this point. She thinks he's hung up the phone. As far as she says she's concerned, he was off the call. It was over. She thought it was over. She didn't hang up on her end. So the jail recording system recorded what she's saying in the background. It really tipped investigators off to her wanting to go to Vietnam. So now, does that call get suppressed? The call that indicates the plan to flee, to show that consciousness of guilt that you were just touching on, Michael J. Brown. What do you think? Does the call stay out of trial?
No, it's coming in, Julie. We're always concerned as defense attorneys about government interaction and getting into your home and things of that nature without a search warrant, and that's understandable. But this is a totally different situation for the sole reason that there's no government action. She's on the phone. She knows she's being recorded. She and her son make this call, and she's having a conversation. There is no government action. And what happens is, unbeknownst to her, she's now continuing to talk and having this conversation, and it's being recorded. Too bad, so sad, but it's really on her. There is no government involvement in the sense of action, and as a result, I think it absolutely will come in. And again, that is going to be a very damning piece when you couple that with all the evidence that they may have at trial.
Oh, you're so right, so right. John Phillips, $1 million question for you. Are we going to see Donna testify at trial?
There's that pesky Fifth Amendment, and by the way, Michael has had a good coffee this morning. He is on everything. But she said so much already that it seems to me her time in the system has made her think she can talk her way out of this. Certainly the jury's going to hear from her from all of her prior statements, and the question is she going to try to double down and triple down and change them around? It's leaning that way.
Right. And watching her, there's part of me that, of course, like the lawyer in me is like, oh my gosh, terrible idea, don't testify, worst thing she could do. But then there's a part of me that's like, maybe Donna needs to roll the dice. Some of yesterday wasn't all that bad. Michael, quick final thought from you, and we'll leave the comments on Donna here for now.
I did have a double. Thank you, John. You know what it is? I think that she comes across, there is that part of her which she has that that, there's a compassionate part of her. She's 75 years old. She does portray herself in a great light. I think there's some sympathy factor for her, but she's going to have a lot of explaining to do, and I don't know if she's going to get over that hurdle. But she is somewhat of a sympathetic figure. I will say that.
Right, Michael. She is. There was something I saw in Donna yesterday that kind of makes me think maybe she should go for it. We'll leave it here for now. You both are coming with us. We're so excited. Opening statements rolls on. Here's what we have coming up for you.
Turn around for me.
Why?
Because you're under arrest.
For what?
For the incident we talked about earlier today.
What am I under arrest for?
For reckless endangerment.
And how was I recklessly endangering my child?
We're not talking about it.
The arrest of this Georgia mother went viral for letting her son walk alone in the town. Well, now her charges have been withdrawn. She's joining us live to talk about it. But first, could California Governor Gavin Newsom release the Menendez brothers? We're going to break down his risk assessment plan when we come back. Two innocent children put to bed,
only to awaken to the sound of gunfire.
Now a father stands trial accused of shooting his own kids in their bunk beds, killing one.
I hope that this individual feels the full weight of the criminal justice system and never sees the light of day.
Court TV takes you inside this tragic case,
as a jury must now decide the fate of this father.
Calm.
Is you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me.
This Andy Cano 1988 supposed letter weighted in the continuum of lies.
I ran around and shot my mom.
The court should deny the current habeas petition by the Menendez brothers.
Oh, there's another layer in the Menendez brothers' quest for freedom. Welcome back. This is what's trending in true crime this morning. California Governor Gavin Newsom now has ordered the state parole board to assess the public risk of Lyle and Eric Menendez's potential release. So this announcement comes just some months after the attorneys for the convicted killers filed that petition for clemency with the governor's office. This also comes days after we saw LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman opposing what's called the habeas corpus petition. That's the petition for the new trial. Now, here's some more from Governor Newsom speaking about his decision in a teaser for his new podcast.
There's no guarantee of outcome here. My office conducts dozens and dozens of these clemency reviews on a consistent basis, but this process simply provides more transparency, which I think is important in this case, as well as provides us more due diligence before I make any determination for clemency.
Oh, he's got a new podcast, huh? Okay. So 90 days have been allotted for the risk assessment investigation. And this morning we're asking our power panel, do you believe the governor will release the Menendez brothers? Let's bring them all in. Still with me, attorneys Michael J. Brown and John Phillips, and want to welcome in criminology expert, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Dr. Debbie, let me start with you. What do you think about this?
Good morning, Julie. Always a pleasure to join you. I think, Julie, this is a crime of hate. You know, we always talk about acronyms and we create the talking points. So for me, this is such a heinous crime for Eric and Lyle to have purchased 12-gauge shotguns. They shot at mother Kitty 10 times, father Jose 6 times. Then the behavior became arrogant, right? Post-mortem, they go on their lavish shopping sprees and buy high-end watches and sports cars. And the T is for terror. They wreaked absolute terror on their parents who gave them life. They took their lives, and ultimately the E in hate for me is evil. So altogether, I think that, as we've talked before, crimes of familicide, patricide, matricide, they've been sentenced to life. But what do I think will happen? I think the risk assessment will take place. 3 areas will be looked at very carefully, past, present, future. And I do think there's a high probability that a decision may be made to resentence.
Oh, this is so helpful. I love your analysis, Dr. Debbie. I've got more questions about these two killers for you. Let's ask our other guest the question with Gavin Newsom. Is he going to be the one to do it? He's in the hot seat on this one, getting some pressure out there. John Phillips, what do you say?
He kind of created his own hot seat, didn't he, though? Like, everybody's got a podcast, including the governor of California. And I'm not going to make too much fun because I'm on a plane to California a little later today. I don't want to be picked up.
They better treat you right, John.
They better. But listen, I got into the OJ series on Netflix this week while I'm on the treadmill. And I the 90s were key for me as I was becoming a college student, law student, lawyer, because you had the OJ trial and you had the Menendez trial, and all of us lived it. Those of us around in the 90s lived this and know what a heinous crime it really was. And certainly we got to take abuse seriously and address abusers and sometimes take a compassionate relook at things, but there seems to be a bit of a gap of those that remember how bad this crime was, like Dr. Goodman was saying, versus, oh, well, they were victims too, when all of that kind of was weighed back then. But Governor Newsom is kind of taking that latter approach.
Right, John. And I really appreciate the last point you made. It's like there are factions of people who seem to have amnesia, got a lobotomy, something, and they're forgetting what these guys did. I mean, it's just like, okay, so we don't even know if the sexual abuse happened. That very clearly, you hear Nathan Hochman going through all their litany of lies they told about these stories that were so self-serving. So we don't even know if they're abuse victims, but we do know they did these two homicides. Boy, oh boy, Gavin Newsom has a big decision. Gavin Newsom, rather, has a big decision to make. Michael J. Brown, let me get to you for your thoughts on this, please.
Julia, I think his decision, whether right or wrong, I do think he's going to end up granting the clemency and/or a resentencing situation. I think he would rather defer to the DA and let him make that move, but I don't know if the DA is going to take him off the hook on that. And I think the risk assessment is certainly going to, if I had to predict and bet the ranch, it's going to come back favorable, other than this horrific crime. And I hate to say other than, everything they've done in jail has been great. They've been model prisoners. They've been helping people. And I'm not suggesting they be released, but from the governor's standpoint, he's going to have a very favorable risk assessment document that's going to say, hey, folks, the parole board is saying they're model prisoners and they're going to be an asset to society. So I do believe he's going to cut them loose at some point in the near future.
Great points. Michael J. Brown, you nailed it. He would rather this be on Nathan Hochman, wouldn't it? I mean, initially he was, oh, we're going to defer, but then it was kind of like a tennis match, right, where we saw the DA say at that last presser, well, the governor, he's got the petition on his desk. He can do what he wants. So it was like a right back at you is what he said. Okay, let's talk about the other method of release. So we've got the habeas petition wanting a new trial. The DA has expressed his opposition. Gavin Newsom, big question mark. We don't know what he's going to do with the clemency petition. And then we've got the resentencing hearing. California has these weird laws where after so many years, criminals can get resentenced for their crimes. During the presser last week, he talked a little bit about that. Let's take a listen.
Rehabilitation is not an issue for the habeas motion. And I want to make that crystal clear, that all the talk about rehabilitation will be talk that will be focused on in the resentencing motion. But as I mentioned before, the habeas motion focuses on the evidence at trial.
Okay, so findings from Governor Newsom's risk assessment will be given to DA Hochman's office and the judge who's going to be presiding over the resentencing, making the ultimate decision. So our next question, what will DA Hochman say at resentencing? Is he going to push back on that too? Dr. Debbie, back to you, please.
Well, I think everybody will be with consistency and continuity in how this gets reviewed. So some of the points made, there will be a look at how are they performing the last 35 years with their incarceration. And it is true, they have created hospice-related services for elder inmates. They've been involved in beautifying the surroundings, if you will, of green space and such. There have been no altercations with other inmates, and the prison officers. So to that end, they are viewed favorably. But a big question I would have, Julie, as a criminologist is, will there be a repeat of crimes and criminality? See, if we just look at the data analytics, we know that those offenders who participate in the violent types of crimes, murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, that's the population who has the highest probability to reoffend. But again, every case has to be examined case by case. I think ultimately the decision will likely be a resentence and a possible release.
Really great points, Dr. Debbie. Thank you for that. John Phillips, back to you. Do you think that Nathan Hochman is going to push back on resentencing too?
He is. I think he's going to take a. So which past do you want to weigh, right? Do you want to weigh the past of the 30 minutes or so of this horrific murder, or do you want to weigh how they responded to their conviction? And I think a prosecutor really has to focus on the crime. That's what they do. And certainly you can give a nod to how they've rehabilitated. I know my dear friend Bob Shapiro is also, wanting the Menendez brothers released. And he didn't say that for the other guy that he represented. But I think he has to take a pretty hardline stand because his job is crime.
Sure. Michael J. Brown, your thoughts on this? What's the DA going to do at resentencing?
I take a different approach to John, only because, remember, district attorneys are elected officials. They unfortunately are politicians. And there's a groundswell apparently in that area and in the state and even the nation of releasing these two individuals because of all they've done over the course of their last 35 years. And the family is in their corner, which is really easy for the DA to go along with this position because, well, the family's in their favor. And unfortunately, and I really mean this, time heals wounds in the sense that the death and the horrific murders are somewhat forgotten. And all they're focusing now is on this rehabilitation part of it. So I actually do think that that the district attorney will reconsider and they'll be let out soon.
Michael, thank you for that. You're all making great points. I want to end on the point of, I think the big question I have in my mind is how dangerous are these guys? Like if they get let out and if they move next door to you, should you be afraid of the Menendez brothers? Dr. Debbie Goodman, let's end with you answering that question for us, please.
Well, thank you, Julie. Again, for me, it's tough to let murderers out in free society and potentially reoffend. But as we've talked many times on the program, is it a singular homicide, double, triple, quadruple, workplace, family? The likelihood, I think, on this particular circumstance is that they've served their 35 years, their families are in favor of their release, and I don't think necessarily that they would participate again in a homicide.
Well, that's reassuring, to hear, Dr. Debbie, and that's really what's going to matter most if they do get let out. I know we're going to keep this conversation going. We'll pick it up another day. Dr. Debbie, I know we need to let you get to your class. Give your students our best. Thanks for your expertise and your time. Still to come here on Opening Statements. Here's what we've got for you.
They're taking you to jail because you decided to walk down the street.
Let go of your hands. That's not his fault.
Yeah, call Army.
You're the mother. That's your responsibility.
Last time I checked, it wasn't illegal for a kid to walk to the store. So.
It is when they're 10 years old.
A Georgia mother's arrest sparked a national debate after letting her 10-year-old walk alone. Well, now the charges that were brought against her have been withdrawn. No prosecution anymore. That mom is joining us live on the program next. And defendant Jermaine Bass's fate now in the hands of the jury. We're talking about what could tip the scales of justice in his case.
Jess.
Welcome back. This morning, we're shining the spotlight on a big update to a story we brought you a few months back. You might remember the case of Brittany Patterson, the Georgia mother who was taken into custody after her 10-year-old son was found walking by himself. She says that her son Soren took it upon himself to leave the home and walk less than a mile into town to a Dollar General store. Well, deputies picked up the boy, returned him home. He was unharmed. They later returned and arrested Patterson in front of her kids.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there somebody up here with the kids besides your grandpa?
No.
Okay.
What? Huh? What? No, there's nobody here but Pop.
Okay. Turn around for me.
Why?
Because you're under arrest.
For what?
For the incident we talked about earlier today.
What am I under arrest for?
For reckless endangerment.
And how was I recklessly endangering my child?
We're not talking about it.
Soren, call Mommy and tell him they're taking you to jail because you decided to walk down the street.
Let go of your hands.
That's not his fault.
Yeah, call Mommy.
You're the mother. That's your responsibility to
Yeah,
keep
I
up with
need
your
you to
child.
not talk to me, please.
Okay. That's
Okay,
true.
Soren, give her a call. Okay. Last time I checked, it wasn't illegal for a kid to walk to the store. So
It is when they're 10 years old.
it is?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to see that on the books.
Okay. Well, you'll see it on your warrant.
Great.
I need somebody here to stay with the kids.
I don't have anybody.
Do you want to take this watch off? Or you want to take
Okay.
it with you?
Well, then I'm calling defects.
Soren, come here.
So Brittany Patterson was charged with reckless conduct for that incident, but the district attorney's office has withdrawn that charge. And we're so pleased to welcome Brittany and her attorney here on the show this morning. Brittany Patterson and her attorney, David DeLucas, joining us live. Good morning to you both. Thank you for coming on the program. Brittany, how did it feel when you got the good news that the charges were dropped?
It felt good, but then my attorney explained to me the difference between with prejudice and without prejudice, and then it didn't feel so. I can let David explain that if he wants. For now, it basically just means that they have decided not to prosecute at this time, and that the, I guess, bail is going to be, taken care of. It's not pretty anymore, but that's pretty much the only difference.
Why do you think it was that they wanted to withdraw the charges, Brittany? Do you think it was the outpouring of support that you got?
I think that might have been part of it, but I hope that it's because they realized that it wasn't the right thing to do. I do believe they could have gone farther in righting this wrong, but it's at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah. You were stunned in that video. I was stunned when I read the facts of your case. Police officers have discretion. Bottom line, they have discretion what to do or not do in the situation. And these officers made a choice to charge you that they didn't necessarily have to make. If you had to do it all over again, would you have done the same thing, said the same things? I'm curious.
Are you referring as far as during the arrest? Would I have done the same thing?
Yeah, because you stood up, you challenged it, you asked questions, you said, what did I do wrong? My son was walking. What, in my opinion, were very smart to question what was happening to you.
I think I would have done the same thing because that's just my personality. Especially when I feel like I'm being accused of something or somebody's saying something about myself or somebody that I know is not correct, then I'm naturally going to question that.
Sure. And this incident with your son, my understanding was you thought he was still home. He had left out without telling you, walked to the store, came back, nothing was wrong, just he happened to come upon the deputies. Is that a fair recitation of the facts?
Kind of. He did not come upon the deputies. There was a citizen that called that saw him walking, and so that's how the deputies got involved. But it is correct, yes. I thought he was at home. I had left to take another child to an appointment, and he just decided to walk to the store.
Okay, gotcha. So somebody had called, somebody seemed concerned. Yeah, it sparked a lot of debate among parents, because your son's at that age, and I'm sure Soren's a great young man, and, every circumstance is different in every family. All parents choose to parent differently, and there's no law on the books restricting what Soren did. David DeLugas, that's where I want to turn to you, please. I know you've got a lot to say about this. Let's start, if we can, with the concern you seem to have with the withdrawal of charges. You're concerned for some reason that this isn't final. Why?
Well, because if you read the dismissal that was filed, just because you call it the dismissal doesn't mean that's what it is. On its face, it says that the reason they're doing this is because there have been no new incidents. Now, that's a veiled threat to say before the statute of limitations passes, which is another 20 months away, they can bring this back. And if there's a new incident, oh my gosh, we're going to charge you again. In other words, they're not saying she shouldn't have been arrested. They're not saying what Soren did or what mom did or did not do was not a crime. They're not saying that. And in fact, this ought to frighten every parent in Georgia and across the country, because the district attorney is literally saying, well, because she's behaved herself, we're not going to pursue it. Guess what? By not pursuing it, they're also depriving Britt and me of the opportunity to defend her and show that she's innocent, that she didn't commit a crime, or to get a judge to rule, hey, you should not have brought this accusation. So it's really, frankly, a little chicken. And it's politically appropriate because they don't want to be found out that they did something wrong.
Have you had any conversations with the district attorney's office directly?
No, in fact, one of the things that's a little disturbing is they filed this on February 7th, didn't send me a copy of it, and instead just emailed it to me on February 10th.
Tell me, what exactly did they file? Did they file a null pros?
No, they did not. In fact, it's just that dismissal of the charges. What I'm saying is they literally are not claiming that she did not commit a crime. They're not claiming that she shouldn't have been arrested. They're literally just saying, we're not going to pursue it. It's the discretion of a district attorney's office. And one of the issues, and you brought it up, and I'm glad you did, it's within the discretion of the law enforcement officer to pursue or not pursue a criminal charge. One of the things that Britt and I have done together, and there's a pending bill before the Georgia House called the Brittany Patterson Act, and it would require law enforcement and dispatchers who are getting 911 calls to ask 3 questions. Does the child appear to be hurt? Does the child appear to be in distress? Is the child at risk of imminent harm from an identifiable source? And if the answer is no, no, and no, let's not waste government resources. Let's not drag parents into court or arrest them or pick up their kids. Let's leave them alone. In fact, the so-called concerned citizen actually talked with Soren and asked him, hey, are you all right? He said yes. Hey, you need any help? He said no. And then he sort of backed away from her at that point. And yet she called anyway, and yet the deputy appeared and decided, oh, this is something we have to intervene and do something. That's what's so tragic here.
Well, it seems that they acted in an abundance of caution. What response are you getting from this legislation that you're proposing, David?
Well, so far, we have now 4 House members who are signed on to co-sponsor the bill, and it's progressing. Where it goes in the legislative process, difficult to say, because there's in Georgia a very short term. They're only in session through March, and if the bill doesn't get from the House to the Senate by the early March, it won't get in through this session. But we're hopeful because we have some pretty strong people and organizations like the Parental Rights Foundation and the Georgia Constitution Party and We Are the Power are all supporting the bill.
All right. Well, listen, thank you both for your time. Thank you for the awareness about the bill. Keep us posted if there's any more progress on it. Brittany, good luck to you and best of luck to Soren. Hopefully you both can move forward, and every good wish as you do. Thank you both kindly.
Thank you.
Coming up next here on Opening Statements, a jury will begin deliberating soon in the bedtime murder trial for Jermaine Bass. We're talking about what may tip the scales of justice.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist Murder Trial, today, only on Court TV.
Thanks for staying with us. Now for what's tipping the scales of justice. Jury deliberations are set to begin any minute now in the murder trial of Jermaine Bass. We're calling this one the bedtime murder trial, as his children are the victims. This is a live look in the courtroom. You can see us getting the camera positioned there. And there's Mr. Bass sitting there in a navy suit in between his lawyers. They say that someone else fired the gun that shot and killed his daughter, Jayla, and wounded his son. We know that the other person in the house was his wife, Shirley Bass, the children's mother. She was not called as a testifying witness. The defendant also declined to testify, which of course is his right. Let's listen to some highlights of the closing arguments together now.
After he murdered his daughter, Jayla, and after he shot his son in the temple, that he left them there, walked all the way past 2 bathrooms into the master bedroom, and he opened up that silver drawer. He put the gun and the magazine inside, and he closed that dresser drawer before doing anything else.
There is absolutely no evidence that the state has presented where that gun was prior to the shooting, who loaded it, was the net. We know nothing. And they have to have evidence.
Closing arguments were good there. All right, so what's going to happen with Jermaine Bass? We really didn't get the answers to the story, right? It's how do the kids go from bedtime kisses and good night to a shooting, a bloodbath in that bedroom? Let me bring in our attorney guests, Michael J. Brown and John Phillips, on the program this morning to weigh in. Wasn't it weird they didn't call Shirley yesterday? Why do we think that was? Michael, to you first, please.
Julie, it was a little odd that they did not call the wife. But remember, I don't know if they need to. The wife would have, I don't know what the wife would have said, but we have to suspect she would not have helped the prosecution and maybe have attributed or contributed to this accidental death or discharge argument. But at the end of the day, you have an admission by the defendant made to law enforcement indicating he's the shooter. So I think that the prosecutor said, hey, we can rely on his admission and the fact that these 2 children were shot. And the accidental discharge theory, I think, really goes out the window when you use a common sense approach. So I think, and again, they're the best suited to determine their strategy because they know the case, but I think they were confident that they had enough without bringing in the wife.
I appreciate it, Michael. John, I want to ask you about Jermaine Bass, his decision not to testify. Your thoughts on that move?
It was the right move here. You know, obviously your audience knows the Fifth Amendment and his right not to self-incriminate, and it would have subjected him to too much scrutiny over what happened leading up to that because he wasn't in the house, and then the mix-up of stories, and ultimately how a bullet went right into his child's head. These facts are one of those cases that's just awful, and it hurts to even talk about.
Yeah, John, you're so right. You're so right. It's a horrible case. One thing's for sure, those kids didn't deserve that. His little boy still having problems from the gunshot wound to his head. We will see what happens when the jury's brought back any minute now. Thank you both. I always love having you two on this program. John Phillips, Michael J. Brown, have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time and your expertise. And that is all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends.